If the only thing I did wrong was stay too long to care for my mom, why was I the one getting kicked out? On Thanksgiving night, my mother said the words that changed my life. You can move to the laundry room or leave. I chose silence. Then I vanished. 4 days later, the panicked calls started. They just realized who had really been paying for everything for the last 3 years. My name is Tessa Whitlock. I am 28 years old, and my life is measured in increments of exhaustion. I am a senior care coordinator at Everhaven Medical. On paper, this means I manage the discharges for high-acuity patients. In reality, it means I am a negotiator, a therapist, a logistician, and the person who absorbs the rage of families who do not understand why the system is failing them. My shifts are supposed to be 12 hours. They are almost always longer. Tonight, my shift had stretched into its 16th hour. A complex discharge involving a nonverbal stroke patient and a fractured family had unraveled at the last minute. By the time I navigated the bureaucracy, placated the specialists, and finally secured the patient's safe transfer to a rehab facility, the hospital lights felt like they were burning holes in my retinas. The drive home to the suburbs of Northbridge was a blur of highway hypnosis. I lived with my mother, Marjorie Whitlock. She was 59. But her body kept score like she was 80. Her health was a fluctuating stock market of complications: type 2 diabetes that she managed with inconsistent discipline, and hypertension that spiked whenever she felt scrutinized. She was, in short, a full-time job layered on top of my 16-hour-a-day job. This house, the one I paid for, was not where I grew up. It was a small, one-level ranch style we'd moved into 3 years ago when her health declined, and she could no longer manage the stairs of our old home. It was supposed to be temporary. I had a brother, Brandon. He is 33, 5 years my senior, and lives 2 hours away in Harbor Heights, a city gleaming with new construction and waterfront properties. He and his new wife, Sloane Kerr, had built a life that seemed hermetically sealed from the messy realities of our family. They were establishing themselves. Their visits were rare, brief, and always felt like state dinners, formal, uncomfortable, and meticulously planned. They had not been to Northbridge in 6 months. The favoritism was not a new development. It was the bedrock of our family. Growing up, Brandon was the investment. I was the utility. Brandon was the one who showed promise, the word my mother used as if he were a developing racehorse. He got the expensive summer camps that focused on coding, the saxophone lessons that filled the house with agonizing squawks for 3 years before he quit. He got the down payment for his first car, a car he totaled 6 months later. I was the smart one. I was the one who didn't need anything. My achievements were met with a simple, "Well, of course you did. Honey, you're smart." My reward for a straight A report card was my mother telling me to turn off the television and go to my room. "You're too smart to be rotting your brain," she'd say. "Go read." Brandon was encouraged to experience the world. I was encouraged to disappear into a book so I wouldn't be a bother. The dynamic had not changed with age. It had only solidified. I pulled into the driveway, the silence of the car's engine replaced by the faint buzzing of a single street lamp. I let myself in. The house was always quiet when I got home, but it was a heavy quiet, not a peaceful one. The air was still, tinged with the faint, sweet sickly smell of her medication and the dust on the carpets she could no longer vacuum. "Mom?" I called out, my voice raspy. No answer. I found her asleep in her recliner, the television casting a flickering blue light across her face. An empty bowl, crusted with the remnants of ice cream, was balanced precariously on the armrest. Her blood sugar monitor was on the side table, unopened. I sighed, a sound that felt like it came from my bones. I gently took the bowl to the sink. The kitchen was always empty, a sink full of her tea mugs and used spoons. The counter littered with crumbs, but no food. No one ever cooked for me. No one ever asked if I had eaten. I opened a can of low-sodium chicken noodle soup, the only thing I had the energy to prepare, and heated it on the stove. I ate it standing over the sink. my back aching from the long hours on my feet. I ate, and I looked at the pile of mail on the counter. That mail was part of my secret. My mother, Marjorie, was convinced that her financial situation was stable. She believed that Medicare and her disability checks took care of everything. She had no idea that everything was a concept being funded almost entirely by me. After I rinsed my bowl, I went to my room, booted up my laptop, and opened the spreadsheet. It was my private ledger of resentment. The mortgage on this house, $900 a month. Her supplemental insurance plan, the one that actually covered the specialists she needed, $350 a month. Her medications, the co-pays for the insulin pens, and the specific blood pressure pills that her insurance only partially covered. It fluctuated, but it often hit $800, the utilities, the groceries. It averaged, depending on her medical needs, between $2,300 and $3,000 every month. I watched the cursor blink on the screen. My savings account, the one I had meticulously built since I started working at 16, was hemorrhaging. It was draining away, month after month, to keep this fragile ecosystem afloat. I was 28 years old, and I was broker than I had been at 22. And I was silent. I was silent because 3 years ago, when she'd had the diabetic crisis that landed her in the hospital for a week, Brandon had been in the middle of a huge project. He'd shown up at the hospital for one afternoon, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit, and told me, "Tess, you're the medical one. You know what to do. Just handle it." So I handled it. I handled the move. I handled the setup of her new care. I handled the bills. And once I started, I didn't know how to stop. My mother's phone lit up on the kitchen counter, a text message. I glanced over. It was from Brandon. The preview showed a picture of him and Sloan on a boat, clinking champagne glasses. My mother had shown me their texts before. His messages to her were always light, breezy, full of pictures of their perfect life. Her replies were always littered with heart emojis. I would be sitting right there, checking her blood pressure, and her phone would buzz. Her whole face would change, softening, brightening. "Oh, hi, my promising boy," she would chirp into the phone, her voice taking on a girlish energy I never heard directed at me. She would laugh at his jokes, coo over Sloane's new haircut, and tell him not to worry about her, that she was just fine. She would hang up, and the light would go out of her face. She'd look at me, her gaze flat and demanding. "Tessa, did you check my sugar? It feels low. You probably bought the wrong crackers again." From sun to staff in the span of 30 seconds. I closed the spreadsheet. The exhaustion was a physical weight, pressing me down into the mattress. I had to be back at the hospital in less than 10 hours for another 12-hour shift. Before I slept, I did my final rounds. I went back to the kitchen and pulled out her weekly pill organizer, the blue, morning, and yellow, night containers, the click-click-click of the plastic tabs, as I refilled the slots for the coming week. Lisinopril, metformin, a statin, a low-dose aspirin. I checked the insulin pens in the refrigerator. I made sure the blood pressure cuff was on the table, ready for her in the morning. My phone buzzed. It was my friend, Jade. She's a charge nurse in the ER. She knows the grind. "How was the 16-hour marathon?" I texted back. "The usual, survived." A moment later, she replied, "Tessa, you can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep her warm. You've been home 3 years. They don't see it as help anymore. They see it as the default." I stared at the message. She was wrong. It wasn't the default. It was my mother. I was the one who was here. The one who knew her medical history inside and out. The one who could spot the subtle signs of hyperglycemia before it became a crisis. Brandon couldn't do this. He wouldn't know how. This wasn't weakness. I told myself as I shut off my light, it was duty. I was choosing to endure this because I was the only one who could. I was the responsible one. I fell asleep, but the house wasn't settled. Just before I drifted off, I remembered the mail. I'd grabbed it from the mailbox on my way in. Bill, junk, catalog, and a thick envelope from the bank, the mortgage company. It was addressed to Mom, but just below her name, in a small typed line, It said, ATTN, Authorized Payer. That was me. I was the authorized payer. I was the one who had set up the payments from my dwindling savings. I had slid the envelope into my scrub pocket before Mom could see it. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what new crisis it contained, what new fee had been assessed, what new form was required. I just wanted to sleep. I'd left it in my pocket, and it felt like a stone weighing me down. It was a premonition, a small paper cut, warning me that the whole thing, the spreadsheet, the silence, the duty, was about to bleed. The invasion began on a Tuesday. It was a week before Thanksgiving. I had just pulled into the driveway after a 14-hour shift, the unresolved tension of the bank envelope still a hard, small square in my purse. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't had the bandwidth. I was just looking forward to 10 hours of oblivion before my next shift. But I stopped, my hand on the car door, my body rigid. A gleaming black truck I didn't recognize was parked in my spot. Attached to it was a small U-Haul trailer. My heart began a low, heavy thud against my ribs. They were supposed to arrive next Thursday. For dinner, a 6-hour visit, tops, not a week early, and not with a trailer. The front door of the house was propped wide open, letting the sharp November cold bleed into the living room. I could hear them before I saw them. The hollow, percussive thud of heavy cardboard boxes hitting the hardwood floor, and a laugh, sharp and bright and unfamiliar. Sloane's laugh. I walked in, my hospital scrubs feeling damp and smelling of antiseptic. The house was in chaos. Brandon was standing in the entryway, looking flustered, holding a large, unfamiliar floor lamp, but Sloane was the center of the storm. She was standing in the middle of our living room, hands on her hips, her expensive wool coat still buttoned. She wasn't looking at the people. She was looking at the things. "This sofa is just sad," she announced, her voice carrying clearly. She gestured to my mother's comfortable, slightly worn couch. Her eyes scanned the walls, landing on the watercolor prints of birds that Mom loved. "And all this? Clutter. The energy in here is completely stagnant. This whole place needs an upgrade, a total reset." "Sloane, hey," Brandon said, finally noticing me. He shifted the lamp awkwardly. "Tess, you're home. We decided to come early. Surprise." "Clearly," I said. My muscles ached. I just wanted to get to my room. Sloane turned to me then. Her smile was bright and toothy, but it didn't touch her eyes. It was not a greeting. It was an assessment. "Tessa, you must be exhausted. You look exhausted." Before I could form a reply, before I could even ask what was happening, they moved past me. Not toward the small guest room, the tiny office space that held a fold-out couch. They moved as a unit, Brandon following Sloane's lead, down the main hallway, toward my room. A cold, sick feeling started to rise in my throat. I followed them. Brandon was carrying 2 large boxes, the U-Haul logo stark on the side. Sloane walked ahead of him, pushed my bedroom door open. It was already ajar. I never left it ajar. And gestured. "Just put them on the bed for now." Thud, thud. The boxes landed squarely on my comforter, on my bed, in my space, the only space in this entire house that was mine. "What are you doing?" My voice was sharp, cracking the polite tension. Sloane turned, her expression one of mild, practiced patience. She looked like she was explaining a simple concept to a difficult child. "Well, we're moving in. Tessa, just for a while. And we're a married couple. We need a real room. We can't be expected to live out of that tiny office." "This is my room," I said. The words sounded small and stupid, even to me. "And we're here now," Sloane said, her voice all smooth, unshakable reason. "Brandon needs a proper space to work. He can't be taking his calls from a tray table. We need the primary guest room. Mom told us it was fine. She said you'd be fine moving into the laundry room." The laundry room. The words hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the hallway. I looked past them. My mother, Marjorie, was standing in the doorway of her own bedroom, half hidden by the frame. She was wearing her old pink bathrobe, Her hands clutching the collar closed at her throat. She was looking at the floor. "Mom?" My voice cracked. She finally looked up, but her eyes slid past my face, focusing on a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "Tessa, honey, it's just for a little while. They need the space. And you're young. You're barely even here. With those hours you work, you can make do. It's important for Brandon to feel welcome and settled. You're young. You can make do." The old familiar refrain. The excuse for every imbalance, every sacrifice, every time I was asked to shrink myself so Brandon could expand. "He feels welcome," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "This is my room." "Don't be so dramatic, Tessa," Mom snapped, her voice suddenly hard. The avoidance was gone, replaced by irritation. "It's family. You compromise. They're here to help." Sloane was already in my room. She had opened my closet and was flicking through my clothes with 2 fingers. Her nose wrinkled slightly. "You really don't have much, do you? This will be easy." I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I felt the strange, cold calm of the emergency room settle over me, the code blue numbness that descends when things are falling apart, the handle it mode. I turned, walked to the hall closet, and pulled out the old stained cot. It was metal and canvas, a relic from camping trips Brandon had taken 20 years ago. I carried it into the laundry room. The room was small, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. It was windowless. The only light was a single, long fluorescent bulb that hummed, a constant, flickering, buzzing that drilled directly into my skull. The smell was overwhelming. It was a thick, cloying cloud of artificial lavender and chemical bleach from the detergents stacked on the shelf. It coated the back of my throat. I unfolded the cot. It opened with a painful screech of metal on metal, the canvas snapping taut. It barely fit, wedged between the washing machine and the hot water heater. This was my new room. I went back to what was my room. Sloane was directing Brandon to empty my dresser drawers into black plastic trash bags. "Just pile it all in," she said. "She can sort it out later. We need to get our things unpacked." I didn't say a word. I walked past them, picked up my pillow and my comforter from the floor where they'd been tossed. I grabbed my scrubs for the next day, my toothbrush, my laptop bag. I carried my life in 2 armfuls. As I left, I saw Sloane take my nursing degree off the wall. It was framed, the matting a deep blue, the gold seal at the bottom reading, "With honors." She looked at it for a second, then set it on the floor, leaning it against the wall, already half hidden by a bulging trash bag. That night, I lay on the cot. The hot water heater clicked and groaned and hissed beside my head. The fluorescent light buzzed. I couldn't find a way to turn it off without unplugging the washer and dryer completely. So I lay there in that sterile, flickering white light, my arm thrown over my eyes. I had to be back at the hospital in 6 hours. I didn't sleep. When I came home the next day, after another 12-hour shift, the house was transformed. Sloane had been busy. She had optimized the living room. The first thing I noticed was the emptiness. My mother's recliner, the worn, overstuffed floral one, the one with the heat and massage features I had saved up to buy her 2 Christmases ago, was gone. "Where's Mom's chair?" I asked. My voice sounded flat in the newly bare room. Sloane didn't look up from her laptop. She had set up her workstation on a sleek, new white desk that had replaced the old family bookshelf. "Oh, that thing? It was hideous. It totally killed the aesthetic. I had Brandon move it to the basement." I looked at my mother. She was sitting on the sad sofa Sloane had insulted. She was perched awkwardly on the edge, a new, harsh, beige burlap throw pillow at her back. She looked small and uncomfortable, and out of place in her own home. "The basement?" I said, turning back to Sloane. "Mom can't get down the basement stairs. How is she supposed to use her chair?" "Tessa, don't be difficult," Mom snapped from the sofa. "Sloane has wonderful taste. It looks much better in here now. It's cleaner." It was cleaner. Sloane had purged the room of our family. The bookshelf was gone, and so were the 24 framed photos that had lived on it. The photo of me graduating from nursing school. The photo of Brandon and me as kids. Missing our front teeth. The last good photo we had of our dad. All of it. In their place, on the fireplace mantel, were 3 tall, minimalist beige candles. A decorative wooden bowl filled with what looked like dried moss. It looked like a photograph in a magazine. It looked like no one lived here at all. I found the old photos later. They were in a cardboard box by the back door, mixed in with old magazines and junk mail, tucked in the same box. I found my framed with honors degree and a small plaque for Nursing Coordinator of the Year I'd received from Everhaven. A dark, sticky sweet stain was spreading across the corner of the matting. Someone had spilled coffee, or maybe just tossed them into a wet trash bag first. The glass on the service award was cracked. I pulled them out, my fingers sticky. I just stood there, holding my accomplishments, smelling of old coffee grounds. I tried to talk to Brandon. I had to. I found him in the driveway, breaking down boxes from the U-Haul. Brandon, you can't just throw Mom's chair in the basement. She needs that chair. Her circulation. He wouldn't look at me. He just kept stomping on the cardboard, his jaw set. Look, Tess, Sloane knows what she's doing, all right? She's a designer. She's just trying to help Mom, to make the place nicer. Just don't start, okay? Don't make this a thing. Make it a thing? A high, hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest. I am sleeping on a cot next to a washing machine. Brandon, my room is full of your boxes. Sloane is throwing out our family photos, and my degree is in a trash box. It's already a thing. He finally turned to me, his face red and set in the stubborn, angry lines I knew so well. You are always so dramatic. You're overreacting. It's just a chair. It's just a room. We're family. We're here to help Mom. Why are you trying to make everyone feel unwelcome? That night, lying in my humming lavender-scented closet, I had to run the dryer. My scrubs were still damp from the quick wash I'd had to run when I got home. I lay there, the cot vibrating slightly from the spin cycle. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of my running shoes hitting the inside of the drum was deafening. Just inches from my head, it was a countdown. Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of my own exhaustion, amplified. It was the sound of my savings draining, of my life being optimized right out of existence. I just lay there, staring at the buzzing, flickering light, wondering how many more thumps I could possibly take before I finally broke. I had been sleeping on the cot for 6 nights. 6 nights of the buzzing fluorescent light, the smell of bleach, and the thump, thump, thump of the dryer. My sleep was measured in 45-minute increments, punctuated by the spin cycle or the gurgling groan of the hot water heater. My body was a knot of permanent tension. Thanksgiving Day arrived, not as a holiday, but as a deadline. This day was, for the last 3 years, my command performance. It was a complex logistical ballet. I was the one who woke up at 5 a.m. to get the 20-pound turkey brined and in the oven. I was the one who managed the 4 different side dishes, the complex timing of oven space, and most critically, the preparation of my mother's safe plates, the low-sodium gravy, the mashed cauliflower that looked like potatoes, the green beans steamed without salt, the sugar-free pumpkin pie. It was exhausting, but it was a familiar exhaustion. It was part of my job. This year, I was relieved of duty. I woke at 6 a.m. in my laundry closet. The house was already alive. The smell of rich, dark roast coffee, not the cheap grounds I bought in bulk, wafted under the door. I could hear Sloane's bright, sharp voice and the deeper rumble of Brandon's. I pulled on my last clean pair of scrubs. I was, of course, scheduled to work a 12-hour shift at the hospital, from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m., and walked out to the kitchen, my body already aching in anticipation of the day. Sloane was in complete control. She was wearing a crisp, gray linen apron over an expensive-looking loungewear set. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect, sleek bun. She was chopping shallots with a rapid, professional thwack, thwack, thwack of a knife I had never seen before. A new, gleaming copper-bottomed pot was simmering on the stove. My mother was sitting at the kitchen island, a place she rarely sat, sipping from a mug of the good coffee. She looked delighted. like a tourist on a vacation she hadn't paid for. "Oh, Tessa, good morning." "Honey," Mom chirped, her voice light. "Isn't this wonderful? Sloan is handling everything." "I see that," I said. I moved toward our old coffee pot, the one I'd set up the night before. "Oh, don't drink that sludge," Sloan said, not looking up from her shallots. "I made a French press. It's on the counter." I stopped. I was just going to start the turkey. I usually get it in by 7. Sloan finally paused. She turned, resting one hand on her hip, the large knife still in her other. "I appreciate the thought, really, but it's all handled. I have a heritage bird, organic, free range. It's been dry brining for 2 days. My way is a little more complex." She gave me a small, tight smile. "We don't really need any hospital cuisine today, do we? This is a celebration." The insult was so clean, so precise, it took my breath away. It dismissed my care, my profession, and my years of keeping my mother alive with one perfectly condescending phrase. "Right," I said. "Hospital cuisine." "Sloan has the most wonderful recipes," Tessa, Mom added, oblivious. "She's making a sausage and cornbread stuffing and a sweet potato casserole with real marshmallows." I looked at my mother. "Mom, you can't have that. The sodium, the sugar." "Oh, Tessa, for heaven's sake," Mom snapped, her good mood vanishing. "It's one day. Don't be such a control freak. Let your sister-in-law cook." I'll make you a small plate of—" "I don't want your hospital food," she said, her voice rising. "I want to eat what everyone else is eating. Sloan knows what she's doing. You're not the only nurse in the world." Sloan wasn't a nurse. She was a brand strategist who, as far as I could tell, designed logos for podcasts. "Fine," I said. I backed out of the kitchen. "I'm going to take a shower before my shift." I retreated. I was an outsider in the house I paid for. I took my shower, the lukewarm water doing nothing to ease the chill in my bones. I returned to my cot in the laundry room and sat there, listening to the sounds of their celebration, the clatter of expensive pans, the murmur of their voices, Sloane's bright, brittle laugh. I spent the morning in my cell, nominally resting before my shift. I checked my mother's blood sugar while Sloan was busy in the living room. It was already elevated, just from the sweet coffee she'd been drinking. I didn't say anything. I just noted it. A cold dread settling in my stomach. I was the professional, but I was no longer in charge. I had been demoted from caregiver to spectator. At 2 p.m., just before I had to leave, Sloan called everyone to the table. "We're eating early, before you have to run off," she announced, as if granting me a favor. The dining table was unrecognizable. Our old, scratched mahogany table was covered with a beige linen tablecloth. The chipped Corelle plates were gone, replaced by heavy, cream-colored ceramic. The flimsy silverware was gone, replaced by a heavy, modern set I'd never seen. The centerpiece was a spray of dried eucalyptus and more of those minimalist beige candles. It was beautiful, cold, and utterly sterile. It was the cover of a magazine, a picture of a life no one actually lived. I sat down in my scrubs. I felt like a stain on her perfect canvas. My mother glowed. She sat at the head of the table. Brandon and Sloan sat on either side of her. A royal court. I was placed at the far end, an afterthought. The food was, as promised, beautiful and dangerous. The turkey was rich and buttery. The stuffing was salty and dense. The sweet potato casserole was practically candy. I sat, picking at the turkey, while I listened to the performance. "Brandon, tell me again about that new project," my mother gushed, her eyes sparkling at him. "The one in Harbor Heights. It just sounds so brilliant." "It's going well, Mom," Brandon said, leaning back, enjoying the attention. "They're talking about putting me in charge of the whole coastal expansion. It's a big deal." "Oh, my promising boy," Mom sighed, clasping her hands. "I always knew you were destined for big things. Sloan, you must be so proud. He's just like his father." I felt the familiar bitter acid rise in my throat. My father had worked 60-hour weeks at a steel mill. Brandon had been consulting for 3 months. I tried to add something, to participate in this fantasy of a family. That's great. Brandon, things are busy at Everhaven. 2. They're actually talking to me about the senior care coordinator position. It would be a big step up. My mother just nodded, her eyes already drifting back to Brandon. That's nice, honey. A coordinator. That's good. She turned back to her son, her focus absolute. So, this expansion, Brandon, does that mean a bonus? You two should be thinking about a house. The dismissal was so complete it was almost clean. I went silent. I just ate, the food tasting like ash, and listened. I listened to them praise Brandon's theoretical future while I prepared to go to my very real 16-hour job of saving lives. After the meal, as I finally stood up to clear my own plate, Sloane put her hand up. No, Tessa, leave it. Her voice was firm. We need to talk, all of us, in the living room. My stomach tightened. I have to leave for my shift in 20 minutes. This will just take a minute, Sloane said. It's a family meeting. I followed them into the optimized living room. The air was thick. My mother sat in the center of the sofa, the one Sloane had deemed sad. Brandon and Sloane sat on either side of her, a solid, united front. They had rehearsed this. I was left standing in the middle of the room, my car keys heavy in my hand. I was the defendant. Brandon started, rubbing his hands on his jeans, unable to meet my eyes. So, Tess, we've been here for a week, and, well, we've been talking. Sloane cut him off, her voice smooth and impatient. What he means is, we've made a decision. We love it here. The air is so much cleaner, and honestly, it's just better for our finances right now than Harbor Heights. We're staying. I stared at them. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My mother picked up the script. She looked at me, her face set in lines of practiced resolution. They're staying, Tessa, long-term, maybe permanently. Permanently, I repeated. My voice was flat. The fluorescent buzz of the laundry room was already ringing in my ears. And the thing is, Tessa, my mother continued, her voice hardening just a little, this house is just not big enough for 3 adults. Not really. Brandon and Sloane are a married couple. They need their space. They need privacy. That little office isn't a long-term solution. She took a breath, and then she delivered the verdict. So, we've decided you can move your things into the laundry room permanently. We can make it nice, or you can leave. The room went completely silent. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic, their 3 faces, all looking at me, expectant. I finally found my voice. It was quiet, but it cut through the silence. I've paid the mortgage on this house for 3 years. Silence, just dead air. Brandon looked down at the minimalist beige rug. Sloane's expression didn't flicker. My mother just blinked, as if I'd brought up an irrelevant, boring fact. I've paid the utilities, I continued, my voice gaining a desperate, low strength. I've paid for your $800 a month medications. This house. I pay for this house. The silence held for another beat. My facts had no power here. They were ghosts. Sloane was the one who broke it. She leaned forward, her hands clasped, and gave me that thin, sharp, pitying smile. And we appreciate your contributions. We really do. But you're young. Tessa, you're 28 years old. It's time you went out and built your own life. This isn't healthy for you. Being cooped up here, taking care of everyone, you're using your mother as a crutch. The audacity of it, the perfectly inverted logic, made me dizzy. My mother seized on it, her voice softening, becoming syrupy and philosophical. She was granting me a gift. She's right, honey. You deserve to be free. You've done so much for me, for all of us. But now it's Brandon's turn. It's his turn to take care of me. She looked at Brandon, her promising boy, with a look of pure, unadulterated love. You deserve your freedom. Tessa, let your brother take care of me. I looked at them. The three of them. The lie was so perfect, so airtight. Let your brother take care of me. The brother who, I knew with bone-deep certainty, had no idea how much her insulin cost. The brother who had never held her hand through a hyperglycemic crash. The brother who was letting his wife throw her favorite chair in the basement. The exhaustion of the last 3 years, the last week, the last 16-hour shift, all coalesced into a single point of cold, hard clarity. The code blue numbness washed over me. The handle it mode. I nodded. Okay. The word was so small, they almost didn't hear it. Okay, what? Mom asked, her voice suddenly nervous. The fight she had prepared for hadn't come. Okay, I'll go, I said, my voice as sterile as the kitchen Sloane had created. I'll go tonight. I turned without another word and walked away from their tribunal. I didn't go to my old room. I went to the laundry room. The smell of lavender and bleach hit me like a wall. The fluorescent light buzzed. I grabbed the black plastic trash bag Sloane had so helpfully used to discard my life. I started packing. It didn't take long. My life, it turned out, was pathetically small. My clothes, my toiletries, my nursing textbooks, my laptop, my cracked Coordinator of the Year plaque. I slid that into my laptop bag. My life fit into 3 trash bags and 1 shoulder bag. My phone vibrated on top of the washing machine. The sound was violent in the small space. The screen lit up. Jade. I answered, my voice steady and low. Jade, can I come over? Her voice, bless her, was instant, no-nonsense alarm. What's wrong? Where are you? I'm in the laundry room, I said. I'm packing. Packing? What? Tessa, what happened? They just gave me an ultimatum, I said, zipping the last bag closed. Laundry or leave? I'm on my way, she said. There was murder in her voice. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't move. I'm moving, I said. I'll be on the curb. I hung up. I hauled the first bag to the front door. The 3 of them were still in the living room, visible from the entryway. They were talking quietly now, their heads bent together, relieved. The problem was solved. I made 2 more trips. My 3 trash bags and my laptop case were piled by the front door. I saw Jade's headlights sweep across the front window. She was here. I opened the front door. The blast of cold November air was shocking. It smelled like wet pavement and pine, and it was the cleanest, best thing I had ever smelled. It was the smell of not bleach. I started hauling my bags to her car. Jade jumped out, her face a mask of pure fury. Tessa, what did they do? Just get me out of here, Jade, I whispered. Please, I have to get to work. She nodded, her jaw tight, and threw my bags in her trunk. I walked back to the front door of the house I paid for. I looked in. They were all still sitting there. They hadn't moved. They were watching me. I pulled the door shut. The click of the latch was definitive. I got in the passenger seat of Jade's car. I didn't look back as we pulled away. No one came to the door. No one called my name. No one waved. The house just disappeared behind me. The ride to the hospital was a silent, vibrating blur. Jade drove, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, her profile a rigid mask of fury. She didn't ask questions. She knew. She was an ER nurse. She knew trauma, and she knew that the only thing to do in the immediate aftermath was to apply pressure and wait. I sat in the passenger seat, my 3 trash bags of a life rattling in the trunk. I was still in my scrubs, and I had a 12-fucking-hour shift to work, a Thanksgiving shift. Tessa, she said, just once, as she pulled up to the staff entrance of Everhaven Medical. The clock on her dash glowed, 2:50 p.m. You don't have to go in. You can call out. You are in shock. I can't, I whispered. My voice was a dry rasp. I need the money. I need to not be on a sofa right now. I need a place where I know what to do. She looked at me, her eyes seeing right through the facade. Okay, warrior. I'm picking you up at 3:15 a.m., not 3:16. I will be at this curb. My ringer will be on. Do not answer your phone. Do not talk to them. Do you understand me? I nodded. A jerky, puppet-like motion. I got out. I went to work. Work was a different kind of oblivion. The fluorescent lights of the hospital were a familiar buzz, a different, more purposeful hum than the one in the laundry room. The chaos of the holiday shift was a blessing. I didn't have to think about my mother, my brother, or the beige-colored sterility Sloane had imposed on my life. I had to think about Mr. Henderson in room 4, whose post-op vitals were trending soft. I had to think about the family in room 12, who were signing a DNR for their matriarch. I had to coordinate a complex, last-minute hospice transfer for a patient whose family had waited too long. I was a machine. I was the coordinator. I was Tessa Whitlock, RN, BSN, the one who handled it. I was efficient. I was compassionate. I was completely and utterly numb. At 3:15 a.m., I walked out of the hospital, the automatic doors hissing shut behind me. The cold night air hit my face, and it was the first thing I had really felt in 13 hours. Jade's car was exactly where she said it would be, idling at the curb. I got in. The silence in the car was different this time. It was heavy, exhausted, fragile. We drove the 10 minutes to her apartment complex without a word. She parked, killed the engine, and we sat in the dark. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's get you inside." We hauled my trash bags up the 2 flights of stairs to her apartment. The door clicked shut behind us. Her apartment was small, lived in. There were books piled on the floor, a half-dead plant on the windowsill, and the lingering, comforting smell of her dinner, garlic and onions. It was the smell of a real person living a real life. She pointed to the sofa. "You're on the couch. Bathroom is there. I have towels. I have a new toothbrush in the package under the sink. I have a bottle of whiskey." I just stood in her entryway, my laptop bag still on my shoulder, my trash bag wardrobe at my feet. And that's when the dam broke. It wasn't a loud sob. It was a silent, full-body collapse. My knees just gave out. I sank to the floor, my hands over my face, and the last 3 years, the last week, the last 24 hours, came pouring out of me in a way I could not control. It was the humiliation. It was the exhaustion. It was the cold, sharp, brutal realization that the duty I had been clinging to was a one-way street, and I had been left stranded. Jade didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't offer advice. She just sat on the floor with me, put a solid, warm arm around my shaking shoulders, and let me shatter. She just held me, a solid, living anchor, as I finally fell apart. There, I tried to say, the words catching in my throat, thick with grief. "They kicked me out." "I know," she murmured, her voice a low, steady rumble. "I know. They're monsters. And you're free." I don't remember much after that. I remember her guiding me to the sofa. I remember a heavy quilt, the softest one I had ever felt, being draped over me. I remember her taking off my sneakers, a gesture of such profound, simple care that it made me cry again. "Sleep, Tessa," she whispered, her hand on my hair. "Just sleep. Nothing else matters." And I did. I slept on Jade's sofa, in the middle of her living room, and it was the first real sleep I had in months. There was no buzzing fluorescent light. There was only the soft, ambient glow of a street lamp outside her window, filtered through her curtains. There was no thump, thump, thump of a dryer. There was only the quiet, rhythmic hum of her refrigerator. There was no cloying, chemical smell of bleach and lavender. There was only the faint, comforting scent of garlic and Jade's shampoo. I slept for 10 solid hours. I slept a heavy, dead, dreamless sleep. I woke up at 1:30 in the afternoon, disoriented, my body stiff, but my mind was quiet. The static was gone. Jade was gone, already at the hospital for her own shift. A note was on the coffee table, next to a mug and a bottle of water. "Tess, Coffee is made. My keys are on the hook. Don't you dare go anywhere but here. There is pizza money on the counter. Do not. Call them. I love you. I sat up, the quilt pooling around my waist, my hands. I held them up in the sliver of sunlight coming through the window. For the first time in what felt like a year. They weren't shaking. The constant, low-grade tremor from exhaustion and stress was just gone. I flexed my fingers. They felt steady. I made my way to her kitchen and poured the coffee. It was strong, black, and hot. I drank it standing at her counter, and with every sip, a small, hard kernel of resolve began to form in my gut. I am a nurse. I am a coordinator. I am a planner. I manage crises. This was a crisis, and I would manage it. I pulled out my phone. It had been off, dead, for 12 hours. I plugged it into her charger, and the moment it lit up, the world came rushing back in. 14 missed calls, 7 from Mom, 7 from Brandon, 23 text messages. They were a predictable, escalating wave of panic, confusion, and blame. Mom: Tessa, where are your keys? I need the car. 4 a.m. Mom: Brandon says your car is still at the hospital. Did you leave it there? That's irresponsible. 5 a.m. Brandon: Tess, Mom's blood sugar is high. What did you do? 6:30 a.m. Mom: Tessa, I'm calling you. Why aren't you answering? This is childish. 8 a.m. Brandon: You can't just run off. You have responsibilities. 9 a.m. Mom: You need to call me. I need you to go to the pharmacy. This is an emergency. 11 a.m. I read them, each message a small paper cut, but the panic wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. I sat down at Jade's kitchen table. I took a deep breath, and I made my new rules. Rule number 1. I will not answer an abusive call. I will not engage in a text message war. Rule number 2. I am a medical professional. I am not their medical professional. I will only respond to a direct, life-threatening medical emergency, and that response will be to call 911. Rule number 3. My time, my money, and my body are my own. The resolve felt good. It felt clean. And then, the panic hit. Money. I grabbed my laptop, I logged into my bank account, and I stared at the screen. The spreadsheet in my head, the one I had been tracking for 3 years, was now a horrifying reality on a bank's website. The number. It was so small. My savings, my nest egg, my get-out-of-anything fund. It was gone. I had bled almost $90,000 in 3 years, keeping my mother's life stable. What was left? After the mortgage payment that had already auto-drafted for December 1st, just days away, after my own car insurance, my student loan payment, what was left? Barely enough for 3 weeks, maybe 4, if I ate only ramen. The cold dread that washed over me was worse than the eviction. I had been so focused on the emotional betrayal that I had ignored the financial ruin. I was 28 years old, a highly skilled professional, and I was about to be homeless and penniless. I put my head in my hands, my coffee forgotten. The shaking was back. I took a breath, and another. Triage. What's the bleed? Stop the bleed. What's the priority? Airway, breathing, circulation, shelter, food, income. I picked up my phone. I went to the hospital staffing website. I signed up for every overtime shift I could. The holiday pay shifts, the awful weekend night double back shifts. I claimed 6 extra shifts in the next 2 weeks. My schedule was now a solid, brutal block of work. It was grim, but it was income. Next, shelter. I couldn't stay on Jade's sofa forever. I opened a web browser. Studio apartments. Westfield. Westfield was a neighborhood on the other side of the river. It was gritty, less convenient, but it was cheap, and most importantly, it was not Northbridge. It was 20 minutes further from my mother. It was 20 minutes further from my old life. I scrolled. The pictures were depressing. Tiny rooms with brown carpets and sad, galley kitchens. But they were empty. They were quiet. They were mine. I bookmarked 3 of them. A 400 square foot box for $900 a month, a tiny attic room for $850, a basement unit for $800. I sent the links to myself. I would make the calls tomorrow. My day was filling up, work, apartment hunting, and I looked at my schedule, my class. I had been taking night classes, one at a time, for a certificate in nursing administration, the path to the senior coordinator job. My next class was tomorrow night. I had been planning to drop it. I couldn't possibly manage it. I looked at the tuition bill I'd already paid for the semester. I looked at the overtime shifts I'd just signed up for. No, I said out loud, to the empty apartment. I'm not dropping it. My schedule was now 12-hour hospital shifts, a 3-hour night class, and apartment hunting in between. It was a brutal, punishing, exhausting schedule, and I smiled. It was a schedule I was choosing. It was all for me. I spent the rest of the day in a blur of pragmatic action. I went to the laundromat. The irony was not lost on me, and washed my 3 trash bags worth of clothes. As I sat there, watching my scrubs tumble in the dryer, I realized I didn't own a proper winter coat. I had a lightweight jacket, but my real one, my good one, was still in the hall closet in Northbridge. I was not going back for it. On the way back to Jade's, I stopped at the thrift store. I found a coat. It was a men's coat, dark gray wool, 2 sizes too big. It had a small moth hole on the sleeve. It was heavy, and it smelled faintly of cedar. It cost $12. I bought it. I put it on in the store. It felt like armor. It was my first purchase for my new life, a reward for leaving. I got back to Jade's apartment, my arms full of clean, folded clothes. I felt solid. I felt, for the first time, like I might actually survive this. And then, my phone buzzed. A new text. It was from my mother. Mom, Tessa, I'm at the pharmacy. They say the insurance isn't paying for my insulin. It's $800. I don't have it. Brandon is in a meeting. Transfer the money. Now. I stared at the message. The old familiar panic surged. The guilt. The automatic reflex to fix it. Her sugar. Her health. Transfer the money. Now. A command. Not a question. I stood in the kitchen, my $12 coat heavy on my shoulders. I thought about my bank account. I thought about the 3 weeks of money I had left. I thought about the attic apartment and the 6 overtime shifts. I thought about her voice, her philosophical tone as she granted me my freedom. Let your brother take care of me. My fingers moved over the keyboard. My hands were perfectly, beautifully steady. Ask Brandon. I hit send. Then I turned the phone over, face down, on the counter. I silenced it. I would not watch for a reply. I had a class to prepare for. Jade got home an hour later, her own scrubs rumpled, her face tired. She found me on her sofa, my laptop open, highlighting a PDF about healthcare budgeting and SBR communication. Hey, she said, kicking off her shoes. You're vertical and studying. Vertical and studying, I confirmed. How are you? She asked. Really asked, her eyes searching mine. I'm okay, I said, and the strangest part was, I meant it. I'm broke. I'm homeless. I'm working 6 doubles in a row, but I'm okay. She nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. I brought pizza. She dropped the box on the coffee table. The smell of hot cheese and pepperoni filled the room. It was the most glorious smell in the world. You know, Jade said, grabbing a slice, I was thinking, you finally got rid of that 200-pound parasite named Brandon, and the other one, what's her name? Satan? Sloane, I said. Right, them. You're free. You know what freedom smells like? I looked at the pizza. I looked at my steady hands. I looked at my $12 coat hanging on her chair, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, a laugh bubbled up from my chest. It was rusty. It was small, but it was real. It smells like pizza, I said, and we laughed. I left the phone face down on Jade's coffee table. I didn't look at it for the rest of the night. I went to my healthcare budgeting class, took 3 pages of notes on Medicare reimbursement models, and came back to Jade's apartment. I ate cold pizza. I went to sleep on the sofa. It was still dark when I woke up. The phone a dead black square on the table. It had not buzzed. It had not rung. They had not called back. My message, "Ask Brandon," had been met with silence. A strange, cold relief settled over me. They were figuring it out. They were handling it. It was Brandon's turn. I went to work. I worked a 12-hour shift in the cardiac step-down unit. I came home. I went to the thrift store and bought a second pair of scrubs and 2 cheap t-shirts. I went to Jade's. The phone remained silent. 2 full days passed. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of my old life, a vacuum waiting to be filled. I started my hunt for an apartment in earnest. I used Jade's laptop during my off hours, calling the numbers I had bookmarked in Westfield. The first was the attic room. I walked up 3 flights of narrow, creaking stairs. The ceiling was so low I had to duck to enter the bathroom. It smelled like dust and old wood. It was $850. The second was the basement unit. The landlord, a heavy man who smelled like cigars, unlocked a metal door at the side of the building. The room was a concrete box. One small, high window looked out onto a patch of muddy grass and cigarette butts. The air was cold, damp, and thick with the smell of mildew, but it had a hot plate, a small buzzing refrigerator, and a lock on the door. It was $800. "I'll take it," I said. I signed the lease that afternoon. I paid the $800 deposit and the first month's rent. $1,600. It was almost every cent I had left in the world. But I had a key. I had a key to a concrete box that was mine. I went back to Jade's, exhausted, terrified, and holding that key. I checked the hospital staffing portal. I was already scheduled for 60 hours over the next 7 days. But it wasn't enough. I needed to furnish my concrete box. I needed to eat. I signed up for 2 more shifts, a Saturday overnight and a Sunday overnight, a full weekend of double shifts. The silence from my family had now stretched into its 3rd day. It was no longer a relief. It was a threat. It was the sound of pressure building. They weren't solving the problem. They were building a case. They were deciding how this was. Once again, my fault. On the 4th morning, the phone finally rang. It was not my mother. It was Brandon. His name flashed on the screen, and my heart hammered against my ribs. A painful, panicked rhythm. I let it ring 4 times, my hand shaking just like it used to. Steady. I took a breath. I answered. "Hello, Brandon? Tessa? What the hell is wrong with you?" He didn't say hello. His voice was a raw, accusatory bark. "Mom's been stranded at the pharmacy for an hour. She's hysterical. She's sitting in her car crying." "I told her to ask you," I said. My voice was low, clinical. "Ask me what?" "She's babbling about $800. $800. What did you do?" "Tess, did you mess up her insurance? Did you let it lapse?" "No," I said. "Nothing is wrong with her insurance. That's the copay. That's what it costs. That's what it has cost every month for the last year and a half, ever since her doctor switched her to the pre-filled insulin pens." There was a dead, static-filled pause on the line. I could hear his breathing, sharp and shallow. "A month?" he said, his voice dropping. $800? A month?" "Yes, Brandon, a month, for her insulin, and that's just the pharmacy." The glass shards were in my hand. It was time to show them. "Then there's the supplemental insurance," I continued, my voice perfectly level. "The one that covers her cardiologist and her endocrinologist. That's $350 a month. And then, of course, there's the mortgage. That's $900 a month. That's due on the 1st, which was 3 days ago." Silence. Total, absolute silence. I could picture him, standing in my old bedroom, or maybe in the new beige living room, his brand strategist wife at his side, his face pale. He was doing the math. He stammered, the accusation gone, replaced by pure, unfiltered panic. That's over $2,000. We can't do that. We don't have that kind of money." Tess, Sloan is just starting her business. We can't afford that. The words I had been swallowing for 3 years finally rose up, cold and hard and clean. I know, I said. Neither could I. But I did. For 36 months. You said you were staying. You said it was your turn to take care of her. Your turn. Tessa, wait. You can't just drop this on us. His voice was rising again, becoming a whine. You have to help us. We have to figure this out. I have to go. Brandon, I have a shift. Don't you hang up on me. Tess, you're being... I hung up. I pressed the red icon on the screen and cut off his voice. I stood in the middle of Jade's apartment, my heart racing, but my hands were steady. The procedure was complete. A week passed, a full 7-day week. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of a bomb that had detonated. I lived in that silence. I worked my 60 hours. I worked my extra Saturday shift. I worked my extra Sunday shift. I was a ghost, haunting the halls of Everhaven, powered by caffeine and sheer, terrified momentum. I used my first overtime paycheck to buy a second-hand futon mattress and a small microwave. I moved them into my concrete box in Westfield. I had my key. I had my mildew-scented room. I had my freedom. I slept on the futon on the floor. It was the first night I had slept in a room of my own in almost 2 weeks. And then, just as the outline predicted, the mortgage payment defaulted. The bank's grace period ended. My phone rang. It was Monday morning. I had just gotten off my Sunday overnight shift, my eyes gritty with exhaustion. It was Mom. I answered. I was too tired for anything but the truth. Hello, Mom. Her voice was a thin, high-pitched wail. Tessa? Oh, Tessa, thank God. Something is terribly wrong. The bank just called. They said the mortgage payment is late. They said it was returned. It wasn't returned. Mom, I said. I sat down on my futon. I stopped it. You stopped it? Her voice was uncomprehending. But why? You can't do that. Tessa, it's automatic. You set it up to be automatic. It was automatic, Mom, from my bank account. The account that I have been draining for 3 years. The account that is now almost empty. I stopped the payment on the 1st of the month. But, she sputtered, the tears turning to anger. You can't just do that. They're going to take the house. Brandon and Sloan are here. This is their home. You have to fix this. You have to call the bank and fix this right now. I looked at the concrete wall of my new room. I looked at the single, high window. No, I said, a sharp, ragged intake of breath on her end. I'm not fixing it, and I'm not calling the bank. We need to talk. In person, not at the house. I told her to meet me at the coffee shop in Northbridge, the one with the bad coffee and the stale muffins. I went back to Jade's to use her printer. I had been preparing for this. For the last 3 days, in the hours I wasn't at the hospital or moving, I had been on Jade's laptop. I hadn't just looked at my spreadsheet. I had logged into my bank account. I had downloaded 36 consecutive months of bank statements. I had gone to the office supply store and bought highlighters, pink for medical, yellow for mortgage, blue for utilities, green for groceries. I printed every single page. I printed my savings account statements, showing the starting balance of over $90,000 3 years ago and the ending balance of $800 today. I printed out the pharmacy receipts I had saved, the ones for $800. I printed the supplemental insurance bills for $350. I didn't just put it in a folder. I put it in a 2-inch, 3-ring binder. I made color-coded tabs for each category. It was an audit. It was an indictment. It was the truth, inarguable, printed in black and pink and yellow and blue. I got to the coffee shop first. I bought a black coffee I didn't want. I sat at a small table in the back and placed the binder on the table in front of me. It made a solid, heavy thud. She hurried in 5 minutes later. She looked wrecked. Her face was puffy from crying, her hair uncombed. She hadn't been sleeping. Good. Tessa, she said, sliding into the chair, her voice a desperate whisper. You have to turn the payment back on. Just for this month. Brandon is trying. We're trying to figure it out. But you have to pay it. We'll pay you back. No, I said. I pushed the binder across the table. I want you to look at this. What is this? She asked, her hands fluttering nervously around it. Your schoolwork? It's my bank account, I said. It's the last 3 years of my life. Open it. She opened it. She saw the first page, the color-coded summary. She saw the total. Her delusion was that I helped with the groceries. Her fantasy, the one she told Brandon and Sloan and herself, was that Medicare and disability paid for everything, and I was just a good daughter chipping in. She flipped a page. She saw the yellow highlighter. $900, $900, $900. Month after month. She flipped to the pink tab. $800, $350, $800. She flipped to the blue tab. Utilities, internet, water, gas. Her face went from pale to ashen. The numbers were blurring her reality. I don't understand, she whispered. This can't be right. The pharmacy. It can't be $800. It is, I said. Look at the receipts. I stapled them to the statements. She turned the page. There they were, dozens of them. Her name, her insulin, $800. She looked at the front summary page again. She finally processed the number at the bottom, the grand total. This says $97,000. Tessa, that's a mistake. It's not a mistake, I said, my voice as cold and hard as my new apartment floor. It's what it cost to keep you in that house and alive for 3 years. It's what I paid. While I was working 60-hour weeks, while I was sleeping in your laundry room. That, Mom, is my savings account. That's every dollar I had. She just stared. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The woman who always had a philosophical justification, who always had a way to make me the dramatic one, was silent. The numbers were too loud. The truth was finally, horribly, visible. I thought, she finally whispered, the tears rolling down her cheeks. I thought I was covered. I thought you were just helping. I'm done helping, I said. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the tile floor. I left the coffee mug on the table, and I left the binder. I'm stopping. You told me it was Brandon's turn. You told me he and Sloan would take care of you. You need to show that to him. You need to show him the price. She looked up at me, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending terror. Tessa, wait, she pleaded. Where are you going? You can't just leave me. I looked at her, sitting there with the massive, 2-inch binder of my sacrifice, the ledger of my life, eaten alive by her needs. I already left, Mom, I said. You told me to. I walked out of the coffee shop. I left her sitting there, alone, with the bill. I didn't have to wait long. The binder I left on that coffee shop table was a bomb, and the shrapnel was flying. 2 days after I'd walked out on my mother, there was a pounding on Jade's apartment door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a rapid, angry thump, thump, thump that rattled the door in its frame. Jade was at work. I was just getting ready to leave for my own shift. A brutal double that would run me straight through the night. I froze. I knew who it was. Thump, thump, thump. Tessa, I know you're in there. Open this door. Sloan, her voice was sharp, stripped of its smooth, condescending lacquer. It was raw and ugly. I opened the door, just a few inches, keeping the security chain on. She was standing in the hallway, her perfect hair a mess. Her face was splotchy and red. The beige minimalist aesthetic was gone. This was full, vibrant rage. She was holding the binder. What did you do? She shrieked, shoving the binder at the door. You spreadsheet. What did you do to her? I showed her the truth, I said. My voice was quiet, deadened by exhaustion. The truth? She laughed, a sound like glass breaking. You call this the truth? You're killing her. You abandoned her. Her blood sugar was over 300 this morning. 300. Do you know what that means? Brandon is at the pharmacy trying to use a credit card for her $800 drugs, and it was declined. You've ruined us. And there it was. Not, you've hurt your mother. Not, she misses you. But, you've ruined us. The us that had been formed 3 weeks prior. I looked at her, at this woman who had invaded my home, stolen my room, and tossed my degree in the trash. I looked at this woman who had calmly, coolly, sat on a sofa and told me I was a crutch and that it was time for me to go. I kept her alive for 3 years, I said, my voice as cold and hard as my new apartment floor. I kept her alive with my time, and I kept her alive with my money. The $97,000 that you're holding, my money, I'm done. You can't be done, she screamed, her face contorting. You're the nurse. This is your job. No, I said. This is my job. I pointed to the Everhaven Medical logo on my scrubs. You are a problem, and I'm discharging you. I unhooked the security chain, opened the door just wide enough to take the binder from her, and then I shut the door in her face. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest sound I had ever heard. She hammered on the door again, screaming my name, screaming that I was a horrible, selfish bitch. I walked to my phone, which was charging on Jade's counter. I found Sloane's number in my contact list. I pressed the button, block contact. I could still hear her screaming in the hallway as I gathered my things. I grabbed my $12 coat and walked out the back entrance of the apartment building to get to my car. I was not going to be late for my shift. The next call came 12 hours later. When I was on my 30-minute meal break at 4 a.m, I was in the hospital cafeteria, eating lukewarm scrambled eggs under the humming fluorescent lights. My phone, which I had unsilenced, buzzed. It was Mom. I stared at it. I was so tired I could barely see. I answered. Her voice wasn't a wail. It wasn't the rage of the bank phone call. It was small. It was the voice of the woman I'd heard on the floor after she'd fallen, before I moved in with her. It was the voice of fear. Tessa, she whispered. I'm here, Mom. Tessa, Her voice broke, a long, shuddering sob. I didn't know, honey. I didn't know. There it was, the apology, the absolution I had craved for my entire life. I didn't know. And as I sat there, under the buzz of the hospital lights, I felt nothing. It was too late. I didn't know was an excuse, not in reason. She didn't know because she never asked. She didn't know because she had preferred the fantasy that her promising boy was the successful one and I was just the helpful, spinsterish daughter. She didn't know because she had actively chosen not to. I know, Mom, I said, my voice flat. They're fighting, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. She's packing. She's yelling at Brandon. She called me a leech. She said this family was a financial black hole, and Brandon, he didn't even defend me. Tessa, he just let her. The schadenfreude I should have felt wasn't there. There was no victory. It was just pathetic. It was a house of cards, and I was the one card that had been holding it all up. I'm sorry you're going through that, Mom, I said. It was my practiced, clinical empathy voice. I used it with families in crisis every single day. What do I do? She pleaded. Tessa, what am I going to do? The mortgage? The medicine? I can't. This was the pivot, the moment. Was I going to be pulled back in? You're going to call the State Department of Social Services, I said, my voice firm. You are going to apply for emergency medical assistance and SNAP. Your income is low enough. You will qualify. I've already looked up the number for you. Social services? She gasped, as if I'd suggested she sell her blood. Tessa, no, I can't. That's for poor people. You are, I said, as gently as I could. And so am I. Thanks to this, that's your first call. But the medicine. Tessa, I need it now. I need my insulin. The hook, The final barb. I will make you a deal, I said, standing up, my break over. I will pay for 1 more month of your insulin, not the mortgage, not the utilities, the insulin, a 30-day supply. I will call the pharmacy and pay for it with my own credit card, which I will then have to spend the next 2 months paying off. This is it. Mom, this is the last time. It's a bridge. In 30 days, you have to have the state aid approved. Do you understand me?
Yes, she whispered. Yes, okay. Thank you. Tessa. Thank you.
Call social services, I said. I'm going back to work. I hung up. I paid for the $800 refill. It maxed out my credit card. The brutal reality of my 60-hour work weeks, of the 70-hour work weeks to come, settled on me. I had accepted the double shifts for the next 6 weeks. I needed them. I needed them to pay for the $800 concrete box I'd just rented. I needed them to pay for this final act of severance. I moved into my studio that week. I had my futon on the floor. I had my microwave. I had my 3 trash bags of clothes. And I had my binder of truth. It was the only thing I put on the single, wobbly bookshelf. I was at the hospital 2 days later, at the end of another double shift. It was 7:30 in the morning. I was walking out of the main entrance, my entire body a single, vibrating ache, my brain thick with fog.
Tess.
I turned. Brandon. He was standing by the visitor's entrance, looking like I had never seen him. He was unshaven. His clothes were rumpled, the same clothes he'd been wearing 2 days ago. His eyes were red. He looked broken. She's gone, he said. His voice was a croak. Who? I said, though I already knew. Sloane. She left. She packed her bags the night she came to your friend's place. She said she wouldn't be dragged down by his financial incompetence. She said I'd lied to her. She said I was a mama's boy with a martyr complex. He was talking to the pavement. She's gone. I'm sorry, Brandon. And I was. I was sorry that he too had been blinded by a fantasy. I saw the binder. Tess, he whispered, finally looking at me. His eyes were swimming. Mom showed me. Jesus. Tess. I had no idea. I thought, I don't know what I thought. I'm so sorry. There it was, the other apology, the one from my promising boy. I know, I said. I was too tired to be angry. I can't do it. Tess, he said, his voice breaking. I can't. The mortgage, the $800. I don't have a job. Not really. The consulting, it was nothing. I need you to come home. I'll move into the laundry room. I'll do anything. But I need you to fix this. He was my brother, and he was a child. He was 33 years old, and he was asking me to come home and be the mom again. No, I said. Tess, please. No, I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing it. I have my own apartment now. I'm not coming back. He just stared at me, his face crumbling. But what do I do? What do we do? I sighed. The coordinator, the planner. You're going to get a job, a real one. I saw a now hiring sign at the Silver Hall Logistics Depot on the highway. They're hiring dispatchers. You're going to call them, and you're going to hire a caregiver for Mom. You can't do it. I can't do it. You need a professional. A caregiver? Like a stranger? Yes, a stranger. Call Everhaven's affiliated services. Ask for Ruth Delgado. She's good. She's tough. She won't let Mom get away with anything. That's what you do. I gave him the solution. Not my time, not my money, just the information. I walked away from him. I left him standing in front of the hospital, and I went home to my concrete box. They did it, because they had no other choice. Brandon got the job at Silver Hall. My mother, using the last of her savings and Brandon's first paycheck, hired Ruth Delgado. The crisis, it seemed, was over. And then, the rumor started. It was a text from my Aunt Clara. Tessa, honey, I'm just checking on you. Your mother and I were talking, and she's heartbroken. She said you'd had some kind of breakdown, that you just abandoned her, that you emptied her bank accounts and left her with your brother. Honey, that's not like you." I stared at the phone, emptied her bank accounts, the narrative, in her shame and fear. My mother had reverted to her old world script. She had painted herself as the victim. She had painted me as the villain. The rage I had not felt for Sloane, the anger I had not felt for Brandon, the sadness I had not felt for my mother, it all coalesced, but it wasn't hot. It was cold. It was strategic. I am a coordinator. I manage information. I sat down at my laptop. I pulled the digital files from my audit. I scanned the key pharmacy receipts. I scanned the mortgage default notice. I scanned my own bank statements, highlighting the $97,000 deficit. I drafted an email. Subject: clarification regarding the Whitlock family. Dear family, there has been a great deal of misunderstanding recently regarding my mother's financial and medical situation, and my role in it. My mother has, unfortunately, been sharing a narrative that is not only false, but is the complete inversion of the truth. I was not abandoning her. I was evicted. I have attached a simple, one-page financial summary of the $97,300 I personally contributed to my mother's household over the last 3 years. I have also attached the receipts for her $800 a month insulin, the $350 a month insurance, and the $900 a month mortgage that I was paying in full. The fact is, I was told to move to the laundry room or leave. I chose to leave. At that time, all financial support from my end ceased. This is not abandonment. This is a consequence. I have attached this file for the sake of transparency. I will not be discussing it further. The facts speak for themselves. Sincerely, Tessa Whitlock, RN. I sent it to Aunt Clara, to Uncle Mike, to my cousin in Ohio, to my other aunt in Florida, to every branch of the family tree. My phone, which had been quiet, exploded. It did not stop ringing for 2 solid days. It was a chain reaction of apologies. Each one was a sputtering, shocked variation of the last. Tessa, we had no idea. She told us you— Oh my God, Tessa, that number. $800, and she told you to leave? Tessa, honey, I am so sorry. I answered the first 3 calls. My response was the same to each one. It was polite, it was short, it was final. Thank you for calling, I said. The truth is clear. I'm not looking to argue, and I'm not looking to rehash it. The facts are the facts. After the 3rd call, I stopped answering. I let them go to voicemail. I let the apologies pile up, one after another, a digital monument to the truth. The rumors stopped. The narrative was dead. I had killed it with a single, devastatingly polite, and lethally factual email. I was no longer the good daughter. I was the one with the receipts. My life began to resemble a life. The 6 weeks of brutal, back-to-back double shifts ended. My bank account, which had been in a state of freefall, stopped hemorrhaging. It wasn't healthy, not by a long shot, but it had a pulse. It was enough. I used the money I had earned, blood money. I called it, to sign the lease on my own apartment. It wasn't the $800 concrete box in the basement. I had gone to see it, and the smell of mildew had been so thick, so reminiscent of decay, that I had walked out. I couldn't trade one tomb for another. Instead, I took a 400-square-foot studio on the 3rd floor of a walk-up in Westfield. It was $900 a month, $100 more than I could truly afford, and it stretched me to the absolute limit, but it had one, non-negotiable, essential feature: a single, large, east-facing window. The first morning I woke up there, I had no furniture. I was on my futon mattress, on the floor, in my sleeping bag. At 6:03 a.m., the sun broke over the neighboring rooftops. A clean, bright, white rectangle of light sliced across the room and hit the opposite wall. I sat up. I had woken up to the sun, not to the buzz of a fluorescent bulb in a laundry room, not to the gurgling groan of a hot water heater. The sun. I sat there for an hour, just watching the rectangle of light move, feeling the warmth on my face, and I wept. It was a different kind of crying. It wasn't the grief of before, it was the sharp, painful, shocking relief of a lung inflating for the first time. My first day off, I went to the hardware store. I bought a cheap, flat-pack bookshelf. It took me 3 hours to assemble. The instructions were a series of confusing diagrams. The Allen key was the size of my fingernail, and I put the center shelf in backwards twice. But when I was done, it stood, albeit with a slight wobble. I unpacked my few remaining textbooks and my cracked Coordinator of the Year plaque and set them on the shelves. It was the first piece of my furniture in my space. My celebration wasn't champagne, it was stability. 2 paychecks later. I went to a second-hand furniture store. I found a small, solid oak kitchen table. It was heavy. It was scarred with old water rings and the ghosts of 100 hot coffee mugs, but the legs were secure. I bought it, along with 2 matching chairs that didn't wobble. That night, Jade came over for the christening. We ate pizza, not from the box on the floor, but at the table. We sat in the chairs. "It's not temporary," I said, running my hand over the scarred wood. It felt real. "It's a real goddamn table," Jade said, raising her bottle of beer. "To real goddamn tables." It wasn't a cot. It wasn't a make-do solution. It was the first permanent thing I had owned in my adult life. The storm I had weathered at Everhaven had not gone unnoticed. I assumed I had been a ghost in the halls, a zombie in gray scrubs, my exhaustion a liability. I was wrong. My shift manager, Cynthia, called me into her office. I braced myself, expecting a reprimand, a concern troll lecture about burnout. "Whitlock," she said. She was a woman who did not waste words. "I've been reviewing the logs." I nodded, my stomach tight. "You worked," she consulted her screen, "nearly 80 hours a week for 6 weeks straight. You pulled more doubles than any 3 of my other staff combined, and your charting didn't slip, not once." I waited. "Your discharge summaries were immaculate. Your handoffs were clean. Your acuity management was textbook." She looked up at me, her gaze sharp. "I don't care what's going on in your personal life, but your performance under what was clearly extreme duress was noted." "Thank you," I said. My voice was quiet. "The senior care coordinator position is opening up," she said, cutting straight to the point. "The official promotion track requires management credits. I'd suggest you get them." She slid a pamphlet across the desk. It was for Northbridge Community College. "This healthcare HR management class," she said, tapping it. "It's on Tuesday nights. The slot is yours to lose. Tessa, don't lose it." I walked out of her office, my legs shaky, the pamphlet in my hand. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a map. I enrolled that night, my tuition, paid for with the first paycheck that wasn't immediately devoured by my past. Felt like an investment, not a sacrifice. My life found a new rhythm. It wasn't the frantic, suffocating thump-thump-thump of the dryer. It was a steady, predictable cadence. Hospital shift, class, study, sleep, and then a miracle. Weekends. My 6 weeks of overtime were done. I was back to a standard 40-hour week. The first Saturday I woke up in my new apartment. The silence was staggering. I had nowhere to be, no one to answer to, no crisis to manage. Jade refused to let me become a hermit. "You're living in a $900 a month box," she announced, using the key I had given her. "You are not going to become a crazy cat lady without the cats. Put on real pants." She dragged me out. She took me to a small, loud bar where a friend of a friend's band was playing. The music was terrible, a wall of feedback and drums, but the bass was so loud I could feel it in my chest, a physical vibration that rattled the exhaustion out of my bones. I drank a beer. The next week, she hauled me to the Repertory Cinema, an old, beautiful theater that smelled of stale popcorn and dust. We watched an old black-and-white movie, and I didn't check my phone once. I was learning how to be a person, not just a function, I was learning how to exist. This new existence required new rules. The phone calls from the extended family, the ones who had apologized so profusely after my email, had started again, but the tone had shifted, the shock had worn off, and the old expectations were creeping back in. My Aunt Clara called. "Tessa, honey, I'm so glad I caught you. Now, I know you're busy, but your mother is having a terrible time with these new insurance forms. They're just so confusing. I was thinking, since you're the nurse, you could just pop over and take a look?" The old Tessa would have sighed, found a 4-hour block in her schedule, and driven to Riverton. The old Tessa would have sat at that subsidized housing kitchen table, deciphering the Medicare Part D options, her stomach in knots. The new Tessa took a breath. I stood in my own kitchen, at my own solid table. "I'm afraid I can't, Aunt Clara," I said. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. She was waiting. She was waiting for the excuse. "I have to work. I have class. I'm sick." She was waiting for the apology, the explanation, the justification she could argue against. I gave her nothing. I just waited. "Oh," she said, her voice instantly cooling, the fake sympathy gone. "Well, all right then." "I have to go," I said. "Have a good evening." I hung up. I had not yelled. I had not explained. I had not justified. I had simply said no. My heart was pounding, but I was smiling. It was a new kind of power. The old world, the one I had propped up, had finally fully collapsed, and in its place, a new, functional, and far less dramatic structure was being built. Without me? My mother sold the house I had paid for, the house Sloane had tried to redecorate, the house that held the laundry room. She had to. The bank was moving forward with the foreclosure, and Brandon's new salary couldn't cover the default. She sold it, and with the small amount of equity she had left, she moved into that subsidized senior apartment in Riverton. It was a 1-bedroom, clean, beige, and inspected by the state. Ruth Delgado, the caregiver I had recommended, was, by all accounts, a terror, in the best possible way. "Ruth makes me check my sugar before I eat," my mother complained to me on one of our brief, bi-weekly calls. "She watches me. She won't let me have my marshmallows. Tessa, she's so mean." "Ruth sounds excellent, Mom," I said. Ruth was, in fact, teaching my mother how to be an adult. She was training her to manage her own insulin pens, to read nutrition labels, to take her own blood pressure. She was doing the job I had never been allowed to do, because I was family. And Brandon, humbled, single, and finally employed, he was actually doing it. He was working 40 hours a week at Silver Hall Logistics. He was sending my mother money every single month, not $2,000, but enough for her co-pays, enough for her groceries. He was, at 33, finally becoming the promising boy, just not in the way anyone had expected. 3 more months passed. Winter was fading. I passed my healthcare HR midterm with an A. I was sleeping 7 hours a night. I had paid off the credit card I'd used for that last $800 insulin refill. Cynthia called me back into her office. "You're acing the class," she said. It was not a question. "Good. I'm moving you. The ER to admission pipeline is a disaster. The process is slow. The handoffs are sloppy. And we're losing revenue because of it. I need someone to fix it." I just looked at her. That's a systems analysis job." "It's a leadership job," she corrected. "And you've proven you can handle a crisis. I'm giving you a temporary project. You'll be the lead coordinator on improving the admission process. It's high visibility. It's yours. Don't screw it up." I walked out of her office, the air in the hallway feeling different, thinner. I wasn't just Tessa, the workhorse. I was Tessa, the analyst, the leader. That weekend, I received my first paycheck with the new project stipend. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more. I walked downtown. I walked past the thrift store where I had bought my $12 coat. I kept walking, to the department store, the one with the nice window displays I had always walked past. The winter coats were on the end-of-season sale. 70% off. I found one. It was dark blue, impeccably tailored, with a lining that felt like silk and a weight that felt like nothing. It wasn't the heavy, scratchy wool armor of my $12 coat. It was a coat for a professional, a coat for a woman who was in charge of her own life. I tried it on. It fit perfectly. I walked to the register, I paid for it, and I didn't feel a single, crushing ounce of guilt. I had earned it. I walked out of the store, my old coat in a bag, the new one on my back. It was warmer, lighter. I walked home to my studio. As I pulled my key from my pocket, I had a sudden, vivid flash of a memory. The smell of bleach, the hum of the dryer, the feeling of my feet hanging off the end of a cot that was too short, the laundry room. The memory was still there. It didn't hurt. It didn't even make me angry. It was just a fact. It was the before. And this, the solid key in my hand, the warm, light coat on my back, the quiet, sunlit room waiting for me on the other side of the door. This was the after. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a perfect, happy ending. It was just my life. And it was, finally, completely mine. My phone buzzed on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my studio, at my real oak table, working on my project outline for the Everhaven admissions pipeline. The text was from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. My mother. "Please, Tessa, the coffee shop, just to talk." The old, stale muffin coffee shop, the scene of the audit. I stared at the message for a full minute. My first instinct was a sharp, reflexive no. I had my rules, I had my boundaries, but the please, it was different from the demands. This was the first time in my life she had used that word, and I believed it. I texted back 2 words. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. She was already there when I walked in, sitting at the same table I had left her at weeks ago. She looked smaller. Her new life, the one in the subsidized apartment, had filed down her edges. She was no longer the imposing matriarch of a house she didn't pay for. She was just an older woman in a clean, but worn, cardigan. I did not hug her. I sat down and ordered a black coffee I did not want. We sat in silence for a moment, the clatter of the shop filling the space between us. She spoke first. She's very strict. She's making me keep a food diary." "Ruth is a good professional," I said, my voice neutral. Yes, she is." She stirred a packet of sweetener into her cup, her hand shaking slightly. "Tessa, I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I waited. I had heard sorry before. It was usually followed by a but. I've been thinking about what you said, about Brandon." She looked down at her hands, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know I favored him. I always did." "Yes," I said. It was not an accusation. It was a fact. He always seemed like he had such a future," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He looked the part. He was my promising boy. And you, oh, Tessa, you were so capable. You were the one I never had to worry about. You were just there. I knew you'd handle it." It was the most honest and the most toxic confession I had ever heard. I punished you for being competent. I rewarded him for being a concept. I waited for the emotional surge, the anger, the grief, the little girl inside me who wanted to scream it wasn't fair. But nothing came. It was a void. I was a nurse, listening to a patient describe a long-held chronic condition. I was registering the information, not reacting to it. I felt empty. "I hear you, Mom," I said. She seemed to take that as acceptance. She nodded, wiping her eyes, a flash of the old, purposeful Marjorie returning. Good. And I want to make it right. I really do. I want to get my affairs in order. For real, this time. My internal alarms, the ones I had cultivated over the last few months, began a low, steady ring. "I'm trying to get all the books, settled," she continued, pulling a thick manila folder from her handbag. With the new apartment, and the state aid, and Brandon, it's all such a mess. The bank, and the social services. They said I need to get things organized. They said, I need someone to be on the papers. She pushed the folder across the table. It was thick with official-looking documents. It's just to help me make sure everything is paid right, to make it right. You're the coordinator. Tessa, you're the one who understands these forms. It's just for the books. Will you sign them? I looked at the folder. I looked at her face a mask of pleading, earnest hope. You're the one who understands. The old familiar hook. I put my hand on the folder, but I did not open it. I'll review them, I said. I stood up, my coffee untouched. I have to get to work. I left her sitting there, her expression a mix of confusion and relief. I didn't even read the papers. I couldn't. I was a nurse, not a lawyer. The moment I got to Jade's apartment, I still had my key. She insisted. I threw the folder on her kitchen counter. She gave me homework, I said. Jade, bless her, picked it up with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. What is it? Forms, to make it right, to fix the books. Jade's eyes narrowed. Tessa, do not sign a single thing. I am 100% serious. You are not her co-signer. You are not her guarantee. It is a trap. It is always a trap. I will bet you $50 right now it's a debt guarantee form. I'm not taking that bet, I said. I'm not stupid. Jade, I'm just tired. Don't be tired, she said, her voice sharp but kind. Be a bitch. Go to work. I'll hold on to these. No, I said, surprising myself. I took the folder back. I'm not going to be a bitch. I'm going to be a professional. I'll handle it. I didn't handle it alone. The next day, I took the folder to work. I found Sarah Jenkins, one of the lead medical social workers at Everhaven. She was a woman who had seen and fought every predatory legal and financial trap designed to fleece the elderly and their families. We sat in the back of the cafeteria, the smell of burnt coffee and floor wax hanging in the air. So, my mom gave me these, I said, sliding her the folder. She wants me to sign them, said it's to help her organize. Sarah was a fast reader. She flipped through the pages, her expression growing tighter. Tessa, where did she get these? I don't know. The bank, maybe? Social services? No, Sarah said, tapping a page. This is not a state-issued form. This is a custom template, a durable power of attorney with fiduciary bonding. This is nasty. Nasty how? A standard durable POA lets you make decisions, pay bills, talk to doctors. It's fine. She turned to page 3. But look at this clause, Article 7. Binding of agent to principal debt. This language, Tessa, this isn't just letting you manage her debt. This makes you liable for it. It legally binds you, the agent, to any and all outstanding financial obligations of the principal. It's a filial responsibility trap. It's almost never enforceable, but it's designed to scare you into paying. A cold, sick feeling washed over me. So, if I signed this, I would be legally responsible for the $97,000? For the mortgage? For everything? And anything new, Sarah said grimly. She could take out a credit card, max it, and they'd come after you. This is predatory. Your mother. It wasn't her, I said, a sudden, cold clarity striking me. She can't even work her new remote control. She didn't draft this. Well, whoever did, Sarah trailed off, flipping back to a page near the front. Oh, no. What? This is the example page, Sarah said, turning the folder so I could see. The part where they show you how to fill out the signature lines, sample agent signature, sample notarization. And there, in a loopy, arrogant, perfectly formed cursive, was a signature on the sample line. Sloan K. Whitlock. It was a landmine, a trap. set and buried by a woman who was long gone. Sloane hadn't just fled the sinking ship. She had tried to chain me to the anchor before she left. She had drafted this, printed this, and left it for my mother to use, knowing that sooner or later, Mom would get desperate and turn to me, the capable one, and my mother, in her ignorance and her hope, had picked up the weapon, aimed it, and pulled the trigger, not even knowing it was a gun. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you." "Tessa," she said, her eyes full of professional concern. "Whatever you do not sign that, burn it." I didn't burn it. I put it back in my bag. I finished my shift. I went home to my studio, my hands steady, my mind a block of pure, cold ice. I was done being the victim. I was done being the reactor. I was the coordinator. I called my mother. "Tessa?" Her voice was hopeful. "Did you look at the papers?" "Yes, Mom, I did," I said. My voice was calm, measured, the one I used when I had to deliver bad news to a patient's family. "I'm not signing them." "Oh," her voice faltered. "But Tessa, I can't. The bank said I need—" "Mom!" I interrupted. "Stop. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to tell me the truth. Where did you get those forms?" A long silence. I found them," she stammered. In the desk, from the old house. I was packing up the last of my things, and Sloane. She had them in a folder. It was labeled for Mom. She printed them out for me. Before she left, she said it was to protect the family assets. "Mom," I said, my voice quiet, but lethal. "Sloane did not give you a shield. She gave you a bomb. That document wasn't to help you. It was a dead entrapment form. The clause on page 3, Article 7, was designed to make me, your agent, 100% financially liable for every dollar you and Brandon owed. Sloane was trying to make me pay for the house. She was trying to make me pay for everything. She set that trap for me. And you just carried it." The sound on the other end of the line was a sharp, strangled gasp. It was the sound of a woman who had just realized she had, however unintentionally, tried to destroy her own child.
No, she whispered, the tears coming hard. "Oh, God, Tessa, I didn't know. I didn't read it. I saw power of attorney. I thought, oh, God."
This time, her "I didn't know" sounded real. This time, it was steeped in a shame so profound I could feel it through the phone. I let her cry for a moment. The old Tessa would have cracked. The old Tessa would have said, "It's okay, Mom, it's not your fault." But I was not the old Tessa. "It's not okay," I said, my voice softening just a fraction, moving from accuser to professional. "But it is fixable. You are not to sign anything from that folder. You need real legal advice, Mom, not a trap from a failed brand strategist." She was sobbing too hard to reply. "I am going to help you," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I've already called. I've made an appointment for you, the Riverton Legal Aid Cooperative. It's a free service for seniors. They are going to review your actual financial situation, your state aid, and your debts. They will help you. They will give you real forms."
Okay, she choked out.
"The appointment is Thursday at 2 p.m., I said. "I've already confirmed it. They are expecting you." There was a long, shuddering breath, and then, for the first time in my 28 years of life, I heard the words. They were small, they were broken, but they were real. "Thank you, Tessa." "You're welcome, Mom," I said. "I have to go." I hung up. I sat in my quiet, sunlit room, the new dynamic. I had not rescued her. I had given her a resource. I turned to my laptop. One more piece of coordination. I opened my email. I drafted a new message. To Brandon, Whitlock at silverhall.com, subject, Fiduciary consultation. Thursday, 2 p.m. Brandon, this is a notification that I have scheduled a pro bono financial and legal consultation for Mom at the Riverton Legal Aid Cooperative. The appointment is this Thursday at 2 p.m. They will be advising her on her outstanding debts, her options regarding the old mortgage, and her state-level benefits. I have already confirmed her attendance. Your attendance is also required. You are her son, and you are her current financial contributor. You need to be in that room, hear the facts, and understand the legal reality of your and Mom's situation. This is not optional. The confirmation is attached. Tessa. I hit send. The new string was being woven, not the old, tangled, toxic ropes of unsaid duty. This one was thin, but it was strong. It was made of 2 strands, the boundary of a hard no, and the transparency of a documented, legal, yes. It was conditional. It was managed. It was the only kind of trust I was willing to build. The new system, boundaries, resources, and conditional trust, worked for 6 months. It was a fragile piece, but it was holding. Brandon was still at Silverhall. His paycheck small but consistent. Mom was stable. Her health managed by Ruth and her finances by the Legal Aid Cooperative. Our bi-weekly calls were short, informative, and safely superficial. How is your blood sugar? How is the admissions project? We were, for the first time, a family functioning at a low sustainable level. The peace, of course, was never going to last. The new narrative began to filter back to me, not as a direct assault, but as a slow, insidious leak. My first email, the one with the $97,000 audit, had been a nuclear bomb. It had silenced the primary accusers, like Aunt Clara. But the secondary family members, the ones who hadn't been on the initial email chain, were now getting a revised, more palatable story. It came from my cousin Mark, in a text. Hey Tess, glad to hear you're doing better. Just talked to Aunt Mary. She said your mom is in a new place. She said it was great that Brandon was able to step up and take over all the finances and finally give you a break after your breakdown. He's a good brother. We're all coming up for Thanksgiving. Hope to see you. I read the text, and then I read it again. Brandon, take over all the finances. Give you a break after your breakdown. The story had been rewritten. My audit, my $97,000 sacrifice, had been erased. My strategic withdrawal was now a breakdown. My eviction was a break. And Brandon, my 33-year-old, newly employed brother who was contributing maybe $500 a month to my mother's $1,800 problem, was the hero. He had stepped up. The cold, precise rage that had become my new companion returned. But this time, I wasn't angry at the lie. I was impressed by its resilience. It was a weed, a piece of crabgrass, and my one-page email had only trimmed the top. The roots were still there, deep in the family soil, nourished by decades of preferring the promising boy fantasy over the capable girl reality. I did not text Mark back. I did not call Aunt Mary and scream. I did not forward my old email. Arguing online was pointless. The facts of the past were not enough. I needed the facts of the present. I am a coordinator. I manage information. My offensive would not be emotional. It would be documented. I began to collect my new evidence. First, I called Sarah Jenkins, the social worker. Sarah, it's Tessa Whitlock. A quick professional question. The summary from that legal aid consultation for my mother back in April. Is that a public document? No, she said. It's privileged, but your mother, as the client, can request a copy at any time. So can Brandon, if he was listed as an attendee. I called my mother. Mom, I need a favor. I need you to call the legal aid office in Riverton. I need you to request a copy of the final summary of your consultation. The one from April. I need you to send it to me. It's for my records. Oh, I don't know. Tessa, she stammered. That was so complicated. It's a one-page summary. Mom, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. It's a simple request. I need it. Please. She agreed. She was, I realized, terrified of the new, calm, boundary having me. She was afraid I would disappear again. The summary arrived in my email 2 days later. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined. It was a cold, legal, factual summary of her actual financial state. It listed her monthly state aid, her food stamp allotment, and her total outstanding debts, which, thanks to the failed mortgage, were still catastrophic. It was a portrait of a woman teetering on the brink, not one being taken care of. Second, I called Ruth Delgado's agency. I was still listed as a secondary medical contact, a holdover from before the fall. Hi, I'm just calling to confirm the service contract for Marjorie Whitlock. I'm her daughter, Tessa, a coordinator at Everhaven. I'm just updating my files. The billing department, after I gave them my credentials, confirmed it. A level 2 home health aide, 10 hours per week, billable rate, $28 an hour, $1,120 a month, a paid professional. Third, I called Brandon. Brandon, it's Tessa. I'm doing my end-of-year financial planning. Can you send me a simple breakdown of what you've been contributing to Mom's expenses? I just need to know for my own records. He was instantly defensive. Why? What are you doing? I'm coordinating. Brandon, I need the numbers. Just email me the monthly amount. He emailed it, reluctantly. Hey Tess, not sure why you need this, but I'm sending $500 a month to her account. It's the best I can do. $500. I now had my arsenal. 1. The legal aid summary, showing her debt. 2. The home health contract, showing her actual cost of care was over $1,100. 3. Brandon's email, proving his heroic contribution was $500, leaving a massive, gaping deficit that my mother was filling by how? I didn't even know. I looked at the calendar. It was November 1st. The countdown had begun. Thanksgiving, the anniversary of my eviction, was 3.5 weeks away. I would not be ambushed. I would not be the topic of whispers over a turkey I didn't eat. I was going to preempt the holiday. I was going to end the narrative, in person, with a presentation. I made a plan, a summit, a family meeting, not a dinner, not a celebration, a tribunal. But this time, I would be the prosecutor, not the defendant. I needed a neutral site, not my apartment, not her apartment. I went online and booked a small conference room at the Westfield County Community Center, a 2-hour block, 7 p.m., the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I needed a moderator. I needed someone who would shut down the interruptions. The, "Oh, Tessa, don't be so dramatic," before it could even start. I called Jade. I need you to be my sergeant-at-arms. Oh, God, she said, her voice electric with joy. Are we finally doing this? Am I allowed to bring a whistle? Can I tase someone? You are not tasing anyone, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. You are just going to be there, as my friend, and your job is to stand at the front and say, Tessa has a 10-minute presentation. She will not be interrupted. All questions will be held until the end. Can you do that for me? Can I wear all black and look terrifying? That's all I'm asking. The invitations, this was the hard part. I called them, one by one. First, my mother. Mom, I am holding a family meeting. It's about your future care and the family finances. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, at 7 p.m., at the Westfield Community Center. I need you to be there. A meeting? She said, her voice small. Yes, Brandon will be there. I'm inviting Aunt Mary and Aunt Clara. It's time we all got on the same page. The real page. Okay, Tessa, she whispered. I'll be there. Second, Brandon. I'm holding a family meeting, Wednesday, November 26th, 7 p.m. Tessa, I'm supposed to be. It's about the $500 a month you're paying, and the $1,100 a month hole in Mom's budget. You will be there. He agreed, his voice sullen. Third, the aunts, Aunt Clara, the original apologist, and Aunt Mary, the new source of the rumor. Aunt Mary, it's Tessa. I'm holding a family meeting on the 26th. I'm going to be presenting the actual facts of my mother's financial situation and my brother's contributions. You seem to be under some misapprehensions. I thought you would want to be there, to see for yourself, to get the real story. It was a challenge. She couldn't resist. Well, I suppose I can. I can come see for myself. Yes, Aunt Clara agreed, her voice dripping with a nervous, guilty curiosity. The stage was set. The room was booked. The moderator was secured. The guests were confirmed.
Now, I just needed the weapon.
I went to my laptop. I am a coordinator at Everhaven. My entire job is to take massive, complex, and emotional crises and distill them into simple, one-page documents: S-bar, situation, background, assessment, recommendation. I created the single greatest SPAR of my life, a one-page handout, not an audit, not an essay, a simple, devastating, bullet-pointed fact sheet. Situation: Marjorie Whitlock's monthly expenses are unsustainable. Background: her care costs, Ruth Delgado, $1,120, plus her living expenses, rent, food, approximately $800, total nearly $2,000 per month. Assessment: her income, state aid, $400, Brandon Whitlock, $500, totals $900 per month. This leaves a deficit of $1,100 per month. Recommendation: a new transparent plan is required. I printed 5 copies, on high-quality, 32-pound weight paper. I slipped them into a crisp manila folder. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing my mind. This was not about slandering Brandon. This was not about humiliating my mother. It was about severing the root of the lie. It was about stating the facts, without emotion, and then setting the final boundary. My endgame, as Jade called it, I prepared my closing statement. It was a simple, 2-pronged ultimatum. 1. I would not be contributing, financially, ever again. 2. I would offer my time and my professional expertise, as a coordinator, to help them find resources, but I would not be the resource. And 3. The hidden one. Anyone who, after this meeting, after seeing the facts, continued to spread the Tessa had a breakdown story, would be cut from my life, blocked, deleted, a complete and total severance. I was ready. The night before the meeting, I was in my studio. I was steaming my one good, professional blouse. I was not nervous. I was not angry. I was calm. I was a surgeon, about to make a very clean, very necessary incision. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Tessa, I'm scared about tomorrow, but I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them the truth. I read the text. A year ago. It would have made me weep with relief. A year ago. It would have been everything I ever wanted. But the new me, the me who had lived in a concrete box, the me who had bought her own real table. I just nodded. It was good that she would tell the truth. It was the right thing to but it didn't matter. Because I was bringing my own. I turned off my phone. I got into bed, in my own quiet, sunlit apartment, and for the first time in my entire life, on the night before a major family confrontation, I fell asleep instantly, and I slept, soundly, until the morning. The conference room at the Westfield Community Center was exactly as I'd expected. It was beige. The carpet was a flat, industrial gray. The walls a pale, sickly yellow. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed, a low, buzzing note of institutional indifference. I had arrived early. I had set up the chairs, not at a table, where they could hide behind coffee cups and form alliances. I had set them up in a semicircle, a horseshoe, with no furniture in the middle. It was an arena. I stood at the open end, my back to the door. Jade was there, as promised. She was wearing black jeans, a black turtleneck, and a severe-looking black blazer. She looked less like a moderator and more like a minimalist bouncer. She stood next to me, arms crossed, radiating pure, unadulterated, do not start. They trickled in one by one, Aunt Mary and Aunt Clara, huddled together. their faces a mask of nervous, gossipy curiosity. Brandon, his face sallow, looking like he was walking into a deposition he was guaranteed to lose. And my mother, small and terrified, clutching her purse to her chest. She wouldn't look at me. They sat. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the squeak of the cheap chairs and the nervous clearing of throats. I looked at Jade. Jade nodded. "We're starting," Jade announced, her voice a sharp, clinical instrument that cut through the tension. "Tessa has a 10-minute presentation. She will not be interrupted. All questions, comments, or outbursts will be held until she is finished. Do we all understand that?" Aunt Mary opened her mouth, a little, "Well, I just—" Jade's eyes snapped to her. "Do we understand?" Aunt Mary's mouth clicked shut. I stepped forward. I held 2 stacks of paper. I did not feel rage, or sadness, or fear. I felt calm. I was in my element. I was at work. "Good evening," I said, my voice projecting easily into the small, dead space. "Thank you all for coming. I called this meeting because for the past year, our family has been operating on 2 separate, false narratives. Tonight, we are going to end that. Tonight, we are only going to deal with facts. There is no blame. There is only the truth." I turned to Jade. She moved with practiced efficiency, handing out the first document. It was a copy of my original, 1-page financial audit, the $97,000 one. "The first false narrative," I said, my voice level, "is that 1 year ago, I had a breakdown and abandoned my mother. The truth is that I was evicted. I was told to move to the laundry room or leave, after I had, for 3 years, been the sole financial support for the household. That document in your hand shows the $97,300 I paid. It shows the $900 a month mortgage. It shows the $800 a month pharmacy bills. It shows the $350 a month insurance, for 36 consecutive months." The room was utterly silent. The sound of the paper, 32-pound weight, was loud as they held it. My mother made a small, broken sound, and then she did something I had not planned for. She stood up. Her legs were visibly shaking. She's telling the truth." Her voice was a thin, reedy whisper, but it cut through the room. She was looking at Aunt Mary. I did. I told her that. I told her laundry or leave. I let her sleep on a cot next to the washer, while she was paying for all of it." She turned to me, her face wet, a landscape of pure, unadulterated shame. I was a terrible mother. I always favored. Brandon stood up, his face ashen. "Mom, sit down." He looked at the aunts, his eyes red. "She's right. And I let it happen. I was there. And Sloan, when Sloan left, she drafted those legal papers, the ones that would have made Tessa pay for everything. I knew about it. I'm sorry. Tess, in front of everyone, I am so sorry." The confessions hung in the air, raw and shocking. My aunts looked like they had been slapped. Aunt Mary found her voice first, a high-pitched, indignant squeak. Well, this is all just terrible. But, Tessa, honey, they're apologizing. They're sorry. This is family. Why can't you just forgive them? Why do all this?" She waved her hand, indicating the room, the papers. It was the question, the one I had been waiting for. "I can," I said, "and I have. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the position I was in. It doesn't mean I am obligated to be the family's shock absorber ever again. This isn't about forgiveness, Aunt Mary. It's about transparency, which brings us to the second false narrative." I looked at Jade. She handed out the second document, my S-bar. "The second false narrative," I said, my voice hardening just a fraction, "is the one that's been circulating for the last 6 months. The story that my breakdown is over and that Brandon has stepped up and is taking care of Mom, that he's the new hero, and I'm just gone. I let them read the paper. I watched their eyes move. Those are the current facts, I said. As you can see, Mom's actual documented cost of living, her subsidized rent, her food, and the $1,120 a month for her professional caregiver. Ruth is approximately $2,000 a month. Her income is $900 a month. That is $400 from the state and $500 from Brandon. I pointed to Brandon, not with anger, but as a fact on a spreadsheet. He is helping. I want to acknowledge that. But $500 is not taking care of the problem. It leaves a deficit, a hole, of $1,100 a month. My Uncle Mike, Aunt Mary's husband, finally spoke, his voice a low growl. Now, you listen here, young lady. This is a family matter. You're shaming your brother. He's trying. He's paying $500. That's a lot of money. It is, I agreed, my voice calm. And I am not shaming him. I am ending a lie that you have been spreading. I looked directly at Aunt Mary. The lie that he is the sole provider and that I am the one who ran. The numbers, they don't lie. The deficit is the truth. And my mother has been filling that deficit. How? Mom? Selling her jewelry? Taking out a payday loan? My mother just wept. The point, I continued, is that the parasitic structure is still here. The only thing that's changed is that I'm no longer the host, and I will never be the host again. I stood up straight. It was time for the boundaries. Here are the new rules, my final rancioi. First, I will not be signing any legal documents. I will not be a co-signer. I will not be a guarantor. I will not be your financial safety net. My money is mine. Full stop. Second, I said, I am willing to offer my professional expertise as a care coordinator. If you, Mom, or you, Brandon, are looking for a new state-funded program, a cheaper pharmacy option, or a new diabetes management class, you may email me. I will send you the links and the forms. I will be a resource. I will not be the service. I will not make the calls for you. I will not fill out the forms for you. I will coordinate. I will not do. Third, I said, my voice dropping. And this is the last one. As of tonight, the truth is on this paper. It is in this room. Everyone here is a witness. Any person who continues to spread either of the false narratives, the Tessa had a breakdown story or the Brandon is the hero story, will be cut from my life permanently. I will block your number. I will block your email. I will be done. There are no more chances. I let the silence hang. It was absolute. Then I shifted, my tone becoming brisk, professional. Now, here is the viable plan. Mom, you are already enrolled in a free community-based diabetes management class. It starts next Tuesday. I registered you. Here is the confirmation. I slid a paper toward her. Ruth's agency has a sliding scale program I have already inquired about. You, Brandon, need to call them and apply for it, using your pay stubs. That will lower the $1,100 cost. Here's the number, and the name of the person you need to ask for. I slid a paper toward him. This is solvable, I said to the room. It is solvable with truth, and with everyone doing their small, manageable part, it is not solvable by me. The room was still. My aunts were pale. My uncle was quiet. Brandon was staring at the paper I gave him, the structure, the parasitic one. They could all finally see it. They could see how it had fed on me for years, and how, in my absence, it was still trying to find a host. My mother stood up again, her hands gripping the back of her chair. She looked at me, not at the aunts, not at Brandon. She looked right at me, and her face was clear. The shame was gone, replaced by a terrible, painful final understanding. You don't owe me anything else, she said, her voice shaking, but firm. You don't owe me. You paid. You paid more than enough. Go. Go live your life.
Tessa, you are free.
I nodded, just once, a small, sharp acknowledgement. I did not hug her. I did not cry. I did not say, I love you. I turned to Jade, who was already gathering my original audit sheets, her face a perfect, professional mask. I took them from her. I put my S-bar presentation back in my folder. I walked out of the semicircle. I walked to the door of the conference room. I opened it. The air from the hallway hit me. It was cool. It smelled of old floor wax and the cold November night air coming through the building's main entrance. It was the smell of not bleach. It was the smell of not lavender. It was the smell of freedom. I took one deep, clean breath. My phone, in my pocket, buzzed. I pulled it out. An email from Everhaven. Subject: Promotion confirmation. Dear Ms. Whitlock, we are pleased to formally confirm your new position as Senior Care Coordinator. I smiled, a small, private smile, just for me. I slid the phone back into my pocket. I didn't need to read the rest. I stepped out of the room. The door to the conference room, with its little plastic sign, swung shut behind me. The latch clicked, a final, definitive, quiet sound. The knot was cut. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm really curious. Where in the world are you listening to this from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share your own thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video and give it a super hype by hitting that button so this story can be heard by as many people as possible.